Today is Tuesday, October 3rd, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Shalau of Is Was Brewing, and I'm here with your other co-host, Chris Quinn of the Beer Temple.
That's how you do it. That's how you.
That's how you did it. That's exactly how you did it last week. What are you talking about?
And every other week that I do
nailed
it.
one.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, man. Very well.
Yeah.
Was here on Saturday. Had a little fun St. Louis time.
Yeah, that's right. Had some civil life and second shift. We're in the house, perennial, draft.
Then I went down to the Middle Brow block party.
Oh yeah, how was
Saw
that?
one of the guests today. Not to jump the guns, but it's a good time. Hang out with some good people.
Nice.
Yeah,
very cool. Yeah, that was. It's funny. I had a bunch of people coming up to me during that event, kind of realizing the truth in something that I'd said, which was, people don't really think of like a standout brown ale that kind of stops you. But Civil Life make at least 3 brown ales that I know of.
Right.
But one of them is their American brown ale, and it's so good.
It's the age-old business model. Make 3 brown ales, do mostly cask ale or draft beer.
Cash in.
It's boring at this point.
And just cash in.
Then laugh all the way to the bank.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, people were coming up and being like, star of the show was the American brown ale from Civil Life, which is cool. It's fun when people can, really take was kind of like a forgotten and overlooked style.
Specifically,
it's like intentionally, so it's not
American
forgotten
brown
because
ale.
it's just overlooked.
Yeah.
But when you nail it, it can really stand out against all sorts of more hyped and popular styles.
Sure.
So that was fun. I have an Orval with me today because I botched it so bad. I had to drink one just so I can really.
You didn't
understand
botch
that
it
beer.
that bad. You got the origins of the beer. You just didn't get the right country, style, or name.
Right.
Which were the 3 things we were supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. I got it right other than
You knew
I
too
got it wrong.
much. You knew too much. You knew it was inspired by English style.
Right.
beers.
Oh, I thought we were talking about what beer was this inspired by.
That's right. You went deep.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a nice segue. But
Thank you.
know
That's
what?
why I'm the co-host.
I'm going to bury the lead a little bit. I want to
cool.
we're doing something a little different this time. So what I propose is we don't talk about the subject until after we introduce the guests.
Let's do it.
Switch things up. Keep the listeners guessing. So
Yeah.
I'm going to...
We never introduce the guest before we talk about the subjects we're going to talk about.
Right. So we always introduce our guests by order of seniority, that being how many times they've been on the show. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a tough one, but I think the senior guest is Mr. Jacob Sembrano of Cruz Blanca. What's up, man?
Wow. I didn't know I was the senior one here. But
Do you know what responsibilities come with being the senior person?
Not a whole lot.
You introduce yourself first.
Yes, hello.
That's the main one.
Yeah.
And then the last one, too.
Yeah.
Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it.
Yeah. What's up with you? How are you?
There's a lot happening in the world. All good things, mostly. Mm-hmm. But with lots of good things comes lots of problem solving. And, just like you said, with seniority comes great power.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, wield it, wisely.
I found this topic of today quite relevant to the things happening in my life because I feel like everything's always very connected. So there's personal and there's professional, I don't necessarily separate the two. Sometimes they're just like different extensions of myself, and this is gonna be a good one.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll keep it rolling. Up next, we have Mr. Matt Tanaka of Stout Collective. What's up, man? How you been?
Good. Does that mean I'm the second most senior? Because that's not true.
I don't know between the next two.
You're just making it all up.
You were next.
The last time I was on your podcast was 2014.
Okay.
So, which either means I did a really bad job. Mm-hmm. Which, okay.
Or,
I remember that
be.
episode. It was bad.
You've been asked to be on several times since
Sure. And it's my fault because
you didn't want to.
Nice, Chris.
Yeah.
Push it off onto the guest.
Yeah, I think that's podcast hosting 101 is make sure the guest feels like
uncomfortable
immediately.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
What podcast are you listening to? Because that's what Chris and I do.
That's what we do.
We're industry plants.
Yeah. I like your hat, by the way.
Thank you.
Seahawks hat. For those,
Yep.
Seahawks hat.
Yep. It's a famously visual medium, a podcast.
Yep. Now who's making who feel bad?
Yeah.
Is that a Carhartt Seahawks
It's
hat?
a Carhartt Seahawks hat.
Is it really?
Yes.
Blue
It is,
collar Seahawks hat.
Yeah, I'm not
Even
really
though it's brown.
Yeah. Not really a football guy, big like sports logo.
Big
guy.
Carhartt guy.
Sports logo.
Big
guy.
Carhartt guy. As you can tell by my appearance.
Yeah.
Just like a worker guy.
What's the best sports logo? Number one. You can only,
best
you can only
I
pick
definitely
one.
have one.
All four
Like-
major sports in North America. In America, I guess.
I think early 2000 Diamondbacks.
Oh, wow.
Really?
It is fucking ridiculous. Or San Jose Sharks, late 90s San Jose Sharks, same thing. Just like really insane,
Silvers,
over the top. Lots of
maroons.
neons, maroons and
Yeah.
aqua.
See, that just shows I don't
It's
have
intense.
taste because I would have probably put them towards the bottom. But what do I know? I think
That depends on how you
Blackhawks.
define
I think the
best.
Blackhawks have my favorite logo
Classic
in,
logo.
Really?
in sports. And I remember when I was a kid in Philadelphia, I had a Blackhawks hat because I loved the logo so much.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was mine. So how about you? Yankees.
Emotionally attached to that logo, but very boring. I like the Brewers logo. They got the M and the B hidden inside of a baseball glove. It's pretty great.
Okay.
I think that one's the best.
All right.
They went away for it for that same time period that he's talking about the best. Arizona having good logos. That was a weird time for major.
I mean, it was pretty much
logos.
the worst period in design. It's like early 2000s, late 90s. Real loud, really crazy. That's why I like it so much.
Nice.
Got it. That was the like the bad dog and the rude dog era stuff like that.
Oversized alien
Big dog, yeah.
T-shirts.
Yeah.
No fear.
No fear.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I'm wearing one of those under this, so
Okay. See, I'm a big.
It's a tattoo.
it's full body.
You know what I'm waiting for it
chest
to
piece.
come back because I bought in heavy. Was
Beanie
when
Babies.
when
Life is
Affliction
Good merch.
and Tap Out comes back in. I'm going to be
It's
laced.
back. It's here.
What do you
just
mean?
in certain parts of the country, it never left.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the same part of the.
I mean, I don't know where
country
your
as flat brim
listenership
hat
is.
Still,
What? What's that?
flat brim country, dude. There's still tap out stuff there.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's why I'm holding.
yeah. Right.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, I'll
then
put to
it's
the
gonna
right
come
on your
back.
tap out merch.
And then I'll
Yeah.
sell it.
You're a big MMA guy. I know.
Yes. Yeah, big time. Well, thanks for coming on, Matt. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have Mr. Gabriel Magliaro of Half Acre. Hope I pronounced that right.
Nailed it.
All right. Awesome. How are you? Been a while. When's the last time you've been on? Do you know the exact year you were on?
No,
I don't.
but it's
Been a while.
the teens,
while.
2016,
Pre-COVID.
pre-COVID.
That's all that matters. Yeah. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's good to burrow down in some interesting topics, beer and otherwise, with you all. I didn't expect the tap out reference coming so soon.
So soon. Yeah, I'm sorry.
We didn't mean
That's
to
all
step
I
on that
got.
for you. We knew you wanted
Yeah.
the tap out references, but that's why we're the hosts. We just steal the best ideas from the guests.
Clearly.
Exactly. So here's the deal. The show is inspired by, I think it was a text that Gabriel sent me after agreeing to come on the show. And it was
one condition.
a couple weeks ago. No, I mean...
It was not a demand.
Yeah, it wasn't a demand. It wasn't a demand. It was, what are we going to be talking about? So hopefully something heady. And this is me paraphrasing. So we wanted something... You wanted something you could sink your teeth into, right?
I suppose.
Gabriel? Yeah.
Were we not going it? Or we're saying it?
I mean, we could talk about...
after the...
Oh, yeah, we
the
could talk
intro.
about it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, something exactly to sink our teeth into.
So we're going to be talking about what are the new flavor combos that are going to be hot this winter for...
Actual combos.
Yeah, for combos.
Yeah. The pizza flavored combos.
Pizzeria
flavored combos. My
Yeah.
bad. Thank
Yeah.
you for correcting me.
Are you a pretzel or a cracker guy? All right, never mind. We'll leave that till the end. So...
Never thought about it, but obviously cracker. Look at me.
Yeah, cracker. Yeah. So I communicated this to you, Mike, and I had some ideas, but then you're
You
like,
texted me and I said, "Does he know what this show is?"
yeah. And I was like, doesn't matter. He's booked.
And then I was literally transcribing it.
And then you're like, well, if you really want to get heady, what about this thing that I've been thinking about lately?
I was literally transcribing it from a video I had watched 3 days before that was still stuck in my head.
Yeah.
So I wanted you have to write this down.
So it was a Noam
remember it.
Chomsky quote.
Yeah.
Right?
Noam Chomsky quote.
And so I'll just say the quote, and then, I send it out ahead of time, and we're just going to see how we can, what that gives us.
Where it leads us.
Yeah. I thought it was a pretty interesting quote. Certainly got me thinking. So here it goes. If you want to be hold on, let me start. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to have something exciting to say, and it's not always easy to come up with exciting new ideas. So you have to come up with crazy ideas, and then they can make it to the front pages. My headphones dropped out halfway through that quote.
Perfect. You weren't
Yes.
nervous about reading that correctly at all, huh?
Right, now I can take off my glasses. So I'll say it one more time. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to have something exciting to say. And it's not easy to come up with exciting new ideas, so you have to come up with crazy ideas. And then you can make it to the front pages.
Should we give a little context of what he was talking about, or just use that as it is and go forward?
Hey, I've done my part.
Yeah,
That's
so
all I'm doing.
That was his. He was talking about specifically French postmodern philosophy, which we talk about on the show a lot, and how they had become, Foucault and Sartre had become somewhat celebrities, and they had gotten a lot of attention, and so they got attention for it was like good, exciting ideas, and then to maintain attention, because exciting ideas are hard to come by, you have to come with crazy ideas if you want to stay on the cover of Le Monde or whatever magazines they were on the cover of.
Got it.
So I thought that was there were interesting parallels to beer in many ways.
Yeah.
And it stuck in my head for at least 5 days, for long enough for me to find the video again and transcribe the quote.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about it for a little while, and I started going in a bunch of different ways. And
Yeah.
for anyone who's ever sat at the bar with Mike and I, we know that we have no problem just, dithering away hours talking about this sort of stuff.
Exactly.
So let's get to it. I mean, anyone can throw it out there, but I know you said you were excited, Jacob, so I don't know.
I mean,
Take it away.
Yeah. I mean, this is it feels a little bit hard to talk about because it's been a part of it's this time of year that it consumes so much physical, mental, and emotional capacity for me, and it's like our barrel aged program, and there's a part of me that's like slightly embarrassed by saying that because it's barrel aged beer, it's not life. But I find a lot of relevance to that statement or comment because the program for Cruz, it's been like wildly popular. Everybody loves new and exciting things, but I think what's really carved its path is kind of like the nimbleness of the program. Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
The nimbleness of the program, the just like the sheer creativity of the program, and to be honest, the luchador kind of theme when proposed at the time by Manny, our president, it wasn't something that I inherently thought was a great idea.
Why not?
I just thought it was kind of tacky and
Like barrel-aged beer programs for tacky?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Oh.
Like having a barrel-aged beer program named after these, such a burly sport.
and specifically masked professional wrestlers. Yeah.
Yeah, but I couldn't see what he saw in terms of an identity, right? And Manny is such a visual marketing type person to where like he will say something, it might not connect with me, but in his head is spinning with colors and ideas and thoughts, and it's hard to translate that, but we're a brewery. We want to have a barrel-aged program. Sure, let's go. And from day one, he's like, I'm hands off on this. Like, I want to, have a say-so in the artwork and maybe the names, but like, this is your creative flex. And it was, and barrel-aged beer has never been something I've, at least with the strong stuff, not necessarily, not mixed culture, but the strong stuff, it's never been something I've had like a terrible passion to make. But I still enjoy the process because it's very, there's a thoughtfulness to it. So then maybe this is where this is like transcending to my personality versus just the process. So the years go by, I think this is year 6 going into it, and the program grows and grows and grows. And every year it changes a little bit. We bring back some of the old beers from last year or previous years, but the thing has evolved into this personality that it's never what I expected it to be, but it's evolved into something that has such a strong life of its own. I don't think I can ever not do it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's pretty bold.
How's that feel, though? Is that
heavy
or is it exciting?
It's super heavy. Sometimes it's exciting and sometimes it's heavy. And I'll say this because this is the first year in 6 years that I had so much trouble being inspired. And I think that was like, everybody has these like ups and downs, and in the world of beer right now is in this like really weird place. But, the program has always been about like me looking at trends and maybe trying to like, not necessarily like turn my back on them, but do something that feels right for what Jacob would do. Mm-hmm. And again, like, so I have to own this program. And it's been super creative. And I think that, we've done these, crazy barrel mixes, and we don't even do stouts. We'll do some stouts, but that's never been like the real centerpiece. The centerpiece of the program now is just like the creativity, how nimble the program is, because there's so many different working elements, the creativity, and then like the cans and the color and everything. And that's like, so now again, it's like, it's alive in its own way. And having to come up with so many, nobody said we had to do 6 every year, but that's the way that, and I'll tell you honestly, that is the way that, if you've seen the brewery at Cruz, it's pretty small. That is so deliberate in the number of releases, because I know that I can fit 9 barrels here, I can fit 6 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 more here. Mm-hmm. And so then I have to start thinking about things in a volume wise, like what beers do I need to be doing more of? So I'm already working with an extreme amount of restriction. So then I have to and I'll say this, like, creativity to me is it needs restriction.
I completely agree.
So this program has been all about restriction. It is the tight leotard on the body, right? And so every year it gets harder and harder to keep up with things, because then you get really emotionally and mentally fatigued. And to be honest, this, it's myself and I have a brewer, and that's us. We have no forklifts. We are stacking barrels 3 high. We're racking beer on the 3rd floor into the basement. Mm-hmm. There's so much work that goes into it, and all of these are really heavily adjunct. So this last year, usually when I'm brewing the beer and I'm starting to fill barrels, I have about a 50%. I know what I want to do, and then some I don't know what I want to do.
No, it's interesting that you're starting from this place, which I think could easily be I think an example of people doing crazy things just to stay on the front pages, because I think barrel-aged stouts have certainly kind of, in some ways, gone that route, and it's interesting.
Stouts in general.
Yeah, stouts in general.
Grown into something very different than what we they
Right,
started as.
right. In order, and I would say to kind of keep it in line with the statement, to keep it on the front pages
Right.
For breweries, and we can even talk about what that means. But I think it's cool that it's been so serious, as I think you said, at least in the email beforehand.
This year is serious, and that is that is because of where my mental state was at the time. Because previous years, when we switched format from bottles to cans, it was playful and fun, and I was like really psyched about it. And then, and there's always some circumstantiating things happening in life that like kind of bleed over into work. But I called it serious this year because I don't feel the same amount of creativity approaching the program, but that doesn't mean that other people won't see it.
Is that just part of being good at something?
Maybe.
You get good enough at something that the things that excite you are no longer the things that excite enough people to make a product out of.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's I think maybe that's what takes you from being a brewer to like a creative, right? Like, you can kind of go through the motions all day, but when you start, being existential about your programs, then you become, something more, right? And that's what this program is, essentially, because we're giving life to something that wouldn't have life originally. But, this beer that we're drinking right now, it reads so well, right? It's double barrel-aged blonde barley wine, aged 1 year in Barbados rum barrels and finished in Colorado rye whiskey barrels for 10 months. Double barrel blonde barley wine. And I call it super standard. Call it a blonde barley wine because the base in itself isn't stylistically bound to anything. So the closest thing that I could call it is a barley wine. It's like pale malt and maybe a little bit of honey malt. Boom. There's not a whole lot to it, but it's such a great canvas for barrel. So last year, when I was putting the program together, I said okay, we're changing formats to bottles to cans, which is a little bit less flexible to me because we want to be able to do a mixed pack of 4 because I want people to explore the whole program. And then we have the cuvee, and that's a dual pack and whatever. And then we have the stout 4-pack, So I had to make this decision in terms of how to package it. So I was left with a lot of this already single aged pale barley wine, blonde barley wine, whatever you want to call it. Great beer. People have always asked, what does it taste like in its unadjunct state? Well, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm giving in that form. I'm giving it to you now, double barrel aged. So maybe nobody will ever know what.
Irrelevant in a way. Yeah.
But this beer came out of restriction, right? I couldn't fit it into the program in a way that felt cohesive, that made sense to me. Mm-hmm. So I had to blend it, hold it for about a month, and then I was like, well, it's just going to have to make its way into next year, and it's getting double barrel aged because it couldn't fit into the program then. So now it's turned into something that
its own thing.
It's its own thing, right?
And it's practicality reaching into the existential, right. I didn't have any space to put this in cans. So.
And I'll go a little bit further. There's another one that's here, and this is with we got these really wonderful apricot brandy barrels. This is a really special beer, but we ended up making something really special out of necessity and out of just straight. To be honest, a lack of inspiration.
It's funny, and it's exciting to hear you so excited about these beers, and you and I have talked, time to time for quite a few years, and I think you have, you like all the beers that you make, but you don't talk this effusively about a lot of your beers. So it's exciting that you're so excited about it, because the thing that I was coming to, the first thing I thought of as me, and I'm hoping we can all come from our own points of view, and me just being a natural cynic was I don't know, does craft beer have anything exciting left to say? And that was kind of what I wanted to explore, is what is exciting? What is exciting, and who is it exciting to? And I've just been kind of trying to wrap my head around that. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to say something exciting. And it's like, exciting for who? Taken serious by who?
Sure.
You know, is it like me who's into like scratch because they make stuff, you know, that they pick up off the ground and like, well, like, good luck, you know, finding that many of me. And they're doing a good job of it, but like, there's only so many of them. So, you know, I find that exciting, but...
Yeah, I mean, when I was starting ISWAs, which now is 4 years ago, the idea was to only make the brewery as big as people that find the same ideas I find exciting.
Right.
Which is working.
Well,
We're still here, you know?
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say this, like, I don't, again, to back it up, like, I don't have a strong desire to, I mean, like, these aren't the beers that, you know, if Jacob said, you know, brewed your heart's desire, it wouldn't be these. But it's still like an extension of my capabilities and of thoughtfulness.
Well, it's obvious that you're
right?
very proud of them.
Yeah, I'm proud of them. I'll tell you this again. This year I felt was like a bit cursed because last year I was so drained of inspiration. Some of these beers just did not want to be made. You know, this one that we're drinking now, what started, you know, we'll blend such a small amount for some of these, like this was like 4 oak barrels. Sight glass in the tank fills overnight. We lose 2/3 of it to the drain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get a picture from like one of the cooks in the morning, like, is this normal? Fuck no, it's not normal. You know, and so then, you know, I'm 45 minutes from work. By some stroke of fate, like a small piece of barrel char got stuck in the sight glass where there was like a little fault in the valve, and it slowed the you know, the spraying of beer everywhere. So we're left with like, you know, a little bit under 2 barrels. Can it all? Like, I just have to be okay with what we have.
Yeah, cool.
And then there's another beer that just put up so much more resistance in terms of product availability that, you know, I lost a lot of sleep over, and that's, you know.
And here they are.
And here they are.
And
we still got, you know, we still have 4 more that, you know, we're going to package in 2 more weeks. But yeah, it's a program
It's
that
really tasty.
It's a
very
monster.
Dynamic.
Yeah.
Super good.
Yeah, and it's just like it's just barrel. But I like this because sometimes like this came from frustration, and it came from not having a place to put it into something that is perceived as very, you know, really layered and fun. But to me, I just like stared at that thing with all the hate I had, you know.
Yeah. Well, you seem like a very creative and very thoughtful person to me.
Most times.
How
yeah.
do you balance like the desire to be creative with the technician side of you, with the business interest side of you? Like, what does that feel like to you, and how do you approach that?
That's also a ton
Not
of work.
just in these things, but in how you approach the beers in general.
That's a ton of work too, and I think, you know, Gabriel can have something really important to say about that too, because we're in this growing phase where like now we have to get really serious about the brand as a whole, and then there's still this very creative side to us, and it's hard to juggle because I have to put myself in like in I have to free my mind, or not even free my mind. I have to like think creatively and really let the inspiration come out, or sometimes lack of inspiration. And then sometimes I have to like think very broadly, and that I guess requires a lot of fortitude and flexibility. And it's have to train. You have trained for it. It's not necessarily something that comes instinctually to me.
What leads?
What's that?
What leads normally? What's your instinct?
I mean, I always want something that can be consumed, right? Like that's not challenging. And sometimes I make some really
those
challenging
headphones
stuff.
beers. You know, those headphones albums, like they're not necessarily like the most enjoyable to listen to just playing, but if you have to like really put your headphones on
You consume them alone.
right,
you think
and like you
about
have to
them.
like
Critical
really,
thinking albums.
Right,
Yeah.
right, critical. So there are beers like that
Oh,
too.
for sure.
I find, and there's beers
And I
that
made
can
them
do
too.
both,
Yeah.
and those are to me most special beers, the ones that are, you know, party time or whatever you want to do, but then also if you really want to sit and chew on them for a little bit.
And things that reward repeat listenings, viewings, or drinkings, right? The more times you
Like
have them,
Orval. I
the
mean,
more
I
you
think
appreciate
Orval's
them.
one of those.
And
Yeah.
one day you'll actually know what it tastes like, and you can tell us when it's blend.
Exactly. This beer.
Right.
My old friend, the ESB.
Right.
I think part of what's interesting about this conversation is it's also a conversation about creativity. Like, where does that come from? I'm interested 6 years of this program. is there a beer, thinking back from this program over the last 6 years, that feels like the most you? Like, regardless of what sold, regardless of what people responded to, like, is there one that felt like that was a creative, like, peak for you?
Oh, absolutely. And those are always the ones that don't really move the best. But there's
Why are they always like that?
I don't know, because sometimes it's easier to take things down with when it's covered in sugar.
Yeah.
But there was this. I mean, I've talked about Caleb at Sugar Creek a lot, but he had this beautiful North Carolina Gold Rice, and I was like, you know what? Like, I want to do something really, really wild that I haven't seen personally myself, and ended up brewing this like 12% base beer with did I say 20? Sorry, 12%, and used about 40% of this malted rice.
Right.
And
which was very cheap. We bought some of it. It was
no, God, it was
great business decision.
Yeah.
Great business decision. This beer was so expensive. But, my idea was like, how can I give this like airy structure and weight to a beer that is also going to be really strong, because I always think about it texturally, right? There's like this mid-palate fullness. It should still finish dry to me, and it should have like this really big up front thing. And if it kind of can seesaw into something in the middle that it wasn't at the beginning, great, right? Mission accomplished. So this beer is really, pale. It's really beautiful. I locked down these really great Italian muscatel barrels, and I'm like, great. Like, I'm like making this very aperitif type thing, because I wanted this lightness and refreshment from the body, but I want like, that vinous character of the wine. And then I'm basically following the path of vermouth, right? Like, started with some kind of spirit, of different origin, generally, from some sort of fortified wine or distilled wine, so I'm already introducing it into this muscatel barrel, what's going to add this vinous character. And then I'm like, at the time I was like really drinking a lot of these Spanish white vermouths, which are not like, a sweeter or dry or red vermouths. They're botanical driven. So I'm like, all right, there's this Spanish vermouth I really liked, and I ended up putting this stuff inside of this beer after it came out of barrels, and it was like lemon peel and orange peel and chamomile and chamomile, apricot, ginger, and then this Italian liquid that they use in substitute to vinegar called verjus, which is basically just like the pressing of very tart, underripe grapes. So I throw it all together, and this thing is like, to this day, it's already like 4 years old, and it's changing every day, and it's still holding up really well. And it's just a really beautiful beer, but the people who have it, they can kind of wrap their head around it. It's not even beer anymore. I loved that beer, and...
But people just didn't get it.
No, not really.
Okay. All right. I mean, that was the preface to your story, was nobody ever gets the stuff that I like the most.
But,
so.
If I put it down at this table, everybody will appreciate it,
Well, now that you said it, we have
Right.
to.
Where's it at?
At least until you left. Yeah.
But that is when you're dropping your release, and it's barrel aged stouts, and it's like, and these beers are shouting at you, and this one's in the corner like, I'm smart too. It's not
Got
going
verjus in it.
Right.
Au
So, I
jus,
mean-
au jus, like it's dipped.
Right. Right. But that's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah.
Like, what's the exciting stuff and what is the crazy stuff? And
Right. And to bring it back to that quote, I think central to that quote is balancing creativity in a way that is actually meaningful and not just I'm doing the most insane creative thing I can do. And so Matt is someone who works with many, many breweries. How do you work with other people's creativity and your creativity to make something that is expressive of both them and you?
Jeez, that's a heavy question.
It's a heavy show.
It's a heavy show. Can I respond to one thing from?
Yeah,
that?
sorry.
What I think is really cool about that is, like, about that example is that is you. It's like a combination between inspiration and situation. It's like you had an idea, and then you had some situations, and then you just had to chase down that idea through that situation. So I think when we think of like what's hard about this topic about like what's a crazy idea or a big idea is all about audience. And like somebody, to a layperson, somebody that's not obsessing over these beers every day, that story that you just told is not a big idea or interesting to them because they don't have any of the language or context for it. And it's a big idea or an interesting idea to you or to people that spend a lot of time in this world because they have all of that context for it. So I think like kind of getting to your question is like, how do you connect all those things, or working with breweries, how do I connect all those things? Like a lot of it has to do with finding the thing that's important about the thing that the brewery is doing, and then understanding the audience and the people, and then trying to find a way to connect it clear enough that it makes sense to everybody. But the problem inherent in that is that it has to do with who cares about the thing that you're doing.
Right. Yeah. Who cares? Who cares about it? And
who
what is
cares?
exciting to them? You know?
Right. It's always different. Like, like so much of what we talked about right now is how do we get big ideas into the liquid, right? And how do we make people feel something?
What do you mean by that? Big ideas into the liquid.
Well, Jake was just describing this like very fully realized concept of this vermouth kind of inspired thing because of the different parts he was making. Those are big ideas that were going into the liquid that went in the can. But then we put them in there. Then how do you get them back out on the other side, right? Like how do you you made this thing, and then how do you evoke feeling or something in people, like, or how do you make something that is like,
man,
I don't know.
So
there's even
hard.
Beers, well, there are
to
beers
do.
that are even
It's
like
so hard to do.
commodities that become more ideas. Like they go the opposite direction, right? They're like not
like the
commodities necessarily,
Montucky cold snacks
but
or that sort of thing. You mean, or
yeah, something like that, or just like, I mean, honestly, not to put it with Montucky Cold Snap,
Old
but
Style,
Daisy
or-
Cutter is like that to me, where it's a fantastic beer that has this like mythos around it because of when it existed, and when it became a thing in Chicago, and how it's grown, and just like it's bigger than just being a pale ale. It's like Chicago's beer in a lot of ways. And I was just wondering, like, you don't have to like give all the secrets away, but what was the process like of taking something that was starting as, you know, a pale ale that was fantastic, and you've grown this thing into like something that exists in hearts and minds of people in a way that's a lot larger than just hops in sugar water?
Well, I think I tune into what you were just saying about, you know, big ideas, and all of what we're talking about is establishing a scale for how people perceive these things. And I think that scale over time has been twisted and changed. And when we got this topic, you know, Chris, you invited us to approach it in the way that felt right for us, which Jacob has been, you know, doing wonderfully as it makes to being a beer maker. And I sort of think about it in the broader context of our industry and what we are all seeing and feeling about the world that is today, and how we got here, and the very early days of craft beer, and what would, you know, stoke the pulse of someone that is thinking about all this, what would tap the pulse of somebody that was drinking Daisy Cutter for the first time in 2010, and today what will increase the heartbeat of craft's most diligent fans. And these are vastly different things. Yeah. And we all did that together over time. And how I thought about this was really like, what did it? How did we get to this place that today, what will do it for us sitting around this table, people that exist in it professionally and creatively, and what will do it for the people that are tracking it down and paying all of our bills, and that are still thinking and still listening to what we're doing.
And I'd argue you need to have a little bit of both, because you need to have some love into what you're putting into it. I certainly would hope so, because there's people like me who care so much about it, and I want the people creating it too as well. So it makes it even more difficult, I think, because you have to kind of serve, you know, two different sides to this.
I don't think you can't communicate about something effectively and really connect with others unless you care about it and you're able to convey that care through your messaging about this is what we did and this is why we did it. But I think it's harder to break through all of that noise, and I think it's harder to pull people into your orbit today, and I think that comes on the heels of more than a decade of kind of professional insanity that our industry sort of everybody was whipped up into a pretty intense frenzy. Maybe 2000 to 2010. If those are Generation 2 breweries, right? I think a lot of that time was you were still existing inside of a pretty normal, traditional beer to market place, right? It was largely like an industrial brewer environment. And it wasn't until after that, really 2010 to 2020, that next wave came in and started to change that. The very first, the Goose Islands and the Dogfish, and those folks were really very much commercially existing as industrial brewers had for a very long time. They started making more intense traditional styles, but it was still very traditional. And they sort of kicked down a bunch of doors that allowed the 2000 people, 2000 to 2010
Right.
people enter.
They opened up pipelines
They opened
to
up
allow the
pipelines
new
and-
people to kind of
Yeah.
insert their beer
Awareness
into.
and
People
people's
opened
brains.
their ears
Yeah.
to what they were doing, to what Small was doing. But it was really that 2010 to 2020 that changed how beer got into the hands of people and really what beer was being made and the intensity that came along with it. And a lot of that had to do, you can't separate social media's influence from beer during that period.
Hazy IPAs.
Hazy
my God.
IPAs, but just
Largely,
the ongoing conversation about what you were doing, the language of new
Bottle caps, man. I mean, we joke about it all the time. Yeah.
Language
all
of
of it.
new is
All
yeah,
of
we
it.
don't-
the
Yeah.
the
Don't
internet
know.
transformed our ability to understand beer and to rapidly access new information about what people were doing endlessly, constantly. So instead of just connecting with the brewery in your town, the 2 craft breweries that were maybe there, hopefully, you were connecting with 300 breweries across the country that were doing new things all the time. And there's a...
And connecting with other people who had that passion.
and we're-
Because they weren't just everywhere.
And they probably weren't connecting with the same 300 that you were connecting with.
Yeah.
So your awareness about new and different expanded exponentially. And that became hard, I think, for our industry. It became complicated for consumers. And if it becomes complicated, I think it's really hard. If you can't sustainably care about something, you stop caring about that thing. And I think that's sort of
Could you define? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Gabriel.
Sure.
Sustainably care about something. What's that mean?
I think it means that we develop interests in things. And when we do that, we say, I really care about this thing, and I want to know more about it, and I want to follow the other things that are like it, educate myself, and invest in it. And when that becomes too much, it becomes a hardship to do a good job at that, you stop doing it. You can sort of attach that to the beer aisle in virtually any market in town where you go through and you're like, this is a lot, and I can't functionally care about all of what this is, so
Yep.
I'm going to retreat back to
Yep.
these things here that are safe.
Yeah.
So, and that was the same when people aren't listening as closely any longer, you speak louder. And we all knew when, fried chicken entered beer and things like that. And, people shouted so loudly in order to get people to care that at a certain point, a lot fewer people were listening. And I think that's that's a lot of the root of what that quote for me is about. Is just how our own personal elasticity to all this, like we're all stretched out. People that cared about this are stretched out by just how far we all went and how extreme it all got. And now we need a new language that isn't about new and different and better and bigger, and it has to be about rooted in something more solid that, again, is about a personal care that hopefully is reflected back in the people that are that are still paying attention to you.
It almost feels like, there was so much noise and, people are stretched so thin. It almost feels like that the route to success is sometimes more marketing driven, but like I want my beer to feel like the way my dad felt drinking a Miller Lite in 1987.
Right.
Like,
well, no, the way that I think about him feeling.
Right.
He probably didn't feel about it very much at all.
Yeah, well, he didn't
all,
think
you
about
know?
his dad drinking Pearl or something, but I think and I
But
think
there's an important,
Right.
I think, distinction between those two things, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want it to feel like me thinking about my dad having that beer,
Right. No.
you know?
I mean, like from an image, that was his comfort, right? Like, whoa,
Right,
we're in
right.
the park, I think if anything here that you've talked about is like Daisy Cutter, 10 years. Of Daisy-
15 years.
15 years of Daisy
It's about
Cutter.
to be 15 years.
You've been able
Wow.
to support that via a narrative and a story, and I've always loved that that we can see the transition. We've seen the transition of that brand from inception to what it is now, and you've always had ways to support it and always put Daisy Cutter on a pillar, even probably when there were probably so many meetings that you've had that thinking that you shouldn't brew it anymore, right?
No.
Oh yeah, just
Nope.
kept pushing it through.
How could you?
That meeting
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good.
literally never.
Oh,
I
that's
couldn't
great
imagine.
because then that's even better because
Probably
I mean
the opposite of
because you've been doing
Yeah.
the right thing because there's people who we've seen legacy brands come and go. We've seen everybody thought Goose Eye and Kolsch was going to last forever and it didn't, or their Christmas sale, or to that point, then you've always done things to support the brand and keep it on the pillar, and that was Galactic Daisy Cutter and Double Daisy Cutter, and you always had things to support the identity of that in fun ways that kept the drinker entertained, and that basically like that.
Little shout outs to the Daisy Cutter drinker.
Yeah, but you're giving something an identity, right? It's kind of goes back to the identity of it. Like Daisy Cutter has had an identity, and that's whether that's been through like the artwork and how it's changed throughout the years, or just everything.
I
to support
really think that the truth of it is less about Half Acre, and it's much more about the people out in the world that have made a series of their own conclusions about it, and taken it in and made it a part of their lives. And that happened at a time when there was less noise, and it was supported by the drinking community, and we tried to support that support. It was sort of a response on our end, and we did that by some of the things that you're mentioning, but a lot of it has been a lack of contact with that beer. It's really, we haven't touched it a lot. Daisy Cutter has a very specific thing. We've done these other brands around it, and we'll sort of explore around it, but Daisy Cutter has remained just that. We don't talk about it a ton, and a lot of the other things that we do is sort of like is of sidecar importance, that somehow Half Acre doing new things supports the idea that Half Acre still has relevance in your life.
Yeah. And what's up, Matt?
Yeah, I want to build off that a little bit. I think, and to inject a little bit of positivity in here, I think we had speaking to the internet idea, that we had this time, there was a lot of attention on beer. We found our friends through the internet to talk about beer. I think that kind of grew through trend and big ideas. It inflated itself to there was a little bit of groupthink that started to happen. It's like your tastes were kind of evolved because of the tastes of your beer advocate forum that you were part of, and like what you thought of as cool or good beer started to be relayed to other people. That kind of ballooned and burst a little bit, and now I think we are in a little bit of a new era where people are forming more of their own opinions. There's still a lot more noise, but I think that noise has shifted attention.
I agree. Like maybe only like 2 years, I think that new era has started.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really current thing. I think to the original quote, I don't really think it's an idea problem that we have. I think it's more of like a attention or maybe a authenticity problem. Like there are a lot of fucking ideas right now in craft beer, and a lot of them are either bad or hollow or not really followed up with.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell when something feels like true and honest and authentic to the brewer or the people that make it, the team behind it, and an idea that feels like, I think this is what we're supposed to do because these other breweries are doing it and it's selling a lot of beer. Like, you can kind of tell. And
people have taken advantage of that too by buying brands that have that feeling to it and then trying to, buy the feeling and mass producing it. And little by little, they've found out that like that withers and atrophies and dies. So
it doesn't have heart behind it. I like buy the feeling is a really good takeaway.
Right.
That
but
is
then
like
the drinkers also realize that too. Like, oh, well, this isn't, these breweries are just, I don't know, maybe being taken advantage of or something like that. And to add another wrinkle to what Gabriel was saying that we need to get to, which is a place where we're just like sustainably creating this feeling of of connection between the drinker. A wrinkle would be, has that ever existed sustainably in beer? Has beer ever been that kind of commodity? I'm not saying it
in
can't
Europe,
be.
In Europe it has. But, there's like generational towns that have been brewing this beer for generations. I'm not saying there's not flaws with that as well, but I think that does exist, and I'm not sure there's a good model that we can look to because I don't think we can erase how we got here, and I think our solution has to be unique for us.
Yeah.
But I think sustainability over time does exist to some degree.
Oh, totally.
What you were talking about at the end of the last thing you were saying was the language of care. How do you go about that? And is that actual language you're using? Is that visual things? Is that the beers you're making? Because that really is an interesting idea that I think is very important. But how do you do that?
I've got no fucking idea. I think is the honest truth.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of very little things that become one big important thing. And speaking as an individual inside of this industry and as someone that helps to run a business inside of this industry, it's certainly, it couldn't be a more important question. And I think we all know when we see glimpses of it. I think we all know when we are being communicated to in that way. For any one of us to draw that template out on a piece of paper, I think is really hard. And I think it gets harder as organizations scale and get larger and larger. And when you get further and further from the people that founded that company, that decide what beer is being made, that make that beer. So a lot of it, I think, is source derivative. Historically, for what has made craft great is that it's source derivative. We are understanding something that has come directly from the thing that's talking to us. We are experiencing something at its source. And when you get further and further from that, and that could be, it's not just the beer. It's the way spaces feel. It's the way branding reflects the individuals that are involved in it. It's a lot of things, but as you get further and further from that, it gets harder and harder, I think, to maintain that direct connection with you, between me and you. And that's a bizarre recipe, and I would say it's a unique quality and a unique expectation for our industry, that we're going to have that connection. We are going to connect in this way, and you are going to tap your sensory experience into mine. That's pretty heady stuff and very unique. You don't expect that from, I drive a Toyota. I don't expect anything from Toyota that I'm going to really understand the founding principles of this business, how the shape of my car, it's a truck, how it looks, how it drives, and how they are communicating to me. I don't expect that from them. I just want a Toyota Tacoma. So I think craft beer is unique.
Yeah, I think, without making this Half Acre Appreciation Hour, although I will make this a Half Acre Appreciation Hour, I think maybe a really good example of maintaining that connection as an outsider looking in at Half Acre is Green Torch. Like that that beer, it's a lime lager. It's something I drank a bunch this summer. I think if it itself is not a new idea, but it is a new interpretation of an idea that feels very comfortable in beer in a macro sense. And I think if you look at, there was a trend a couple of years ago, trying not to name anything, of other bigger Midwestern breweries that tried to put out adjunct light lagers that were not very good and were cheap and didn't have any connection to people. That failed pretty hard, and I think it was because it felt really wrong and inauthentic. It felt like kind of a money grab, the example that I'm talking about. I feel
felt like the brewer was told to go make this because the numbers say
directed.
You should make it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that beer it was directed. I have a pretty good idea what you're talking about. It was directed.
I think we all do. Yeah. But I think everything about it, and then you compare that to something like Green Charge. I'm not trying to connect the two, but what I'm trying to say is that beer had so much real authenticity to it. Like it felt like something that Half Acre would do. It didn't feel at all like something that somebody sat around in a room and said, you know what would sell really well in the summer months? It felt like, yeah, Half Acre would put out this beer. The liquid's great, the can looks fucking cool, and it's great for when it's 12-ounce cans in a 12-pack. It feels right. It just felt very much like Half Acre knew who Half Acre was. I think that's a really good way to
Terrific.
Nailed
So
it.
glad to hear it. You know,
how did it do?
it's been the best selling beer at our brewery for a long, I don't know, months and months now. And I don't have any information to back up what you're saying right now. Other than, we put out that beer, we felt good about it, and it has landed, at least in that sense.
Right.
Felt natural.
It's
Natural's a good
interesting that, like, I think Coors Banquet just had like an anniversary or a birthday or something like that, and I was that's where my mind was going when you were talking earlier, Gabriel, about you just kind of put it out there and it kind of connects with people, and I was thinking a beer like that has now connected and disconnected and then reconnected with other people, and it made me think about what you were talking about, Jacob, like maybe people thinking like, oh, I want to feel like my granddad felt like when he had I want to be like Smokey and the Bandit or whatever it was, like that era. I want to go back to that, and now they've gravitated to it, and it's just always kind of been there. But how difficult is that to do? And is that exciting? Is that something that should be taken seriously? Is it?
I mean, there's a lot of power in continuing to be, just continuing to exist so that people can make memories around the thing, whether or not you are the one dictating how they're making those memories.
Right.
But
Right. Interesting. Just kind of where my mind had gone. You were going to say something, Jacob?
It was, but no, I
Okay.
lost it. Sorry.
Don't worry.
there is also like something that is like tangibly more intimate about beer than your Tacoma in that example, insofar as you actually put beer inside of you, right? Like there's a handful of things that actually go into you and interact with your body in a way that is molecular and different. And alcohol is maybe the most unique of that, because it alters you in ways that are different than if you eat carrots or Cheez-Its or other consumer packaged goods, where it is a legitimately more intimate experience that I think craft beer just, in America recently figured out or stumbled upon, that people are having a more intimate experience with this product than they are with their Fisher-Price toys or with a book they bought or something like that.
To push back on that, though, now you have
Beer doesn't
weed.
go inside of you?
No, weed. Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah. But you have marijuana now, which is being consumed, and it's kind of altering your mind, and there's subtleties to it, and you can get really geeky about it. But what I'm seeing people wanting to do is abstract it so far away from the plant material and put it into a piece of candy and just like pop it. So it's just kind of interesting
that doesn't have
that
the
hasn't-
branding and presentation of it.
Well, the
I'm
delivery,
just
the
more brand
I'm
delivery.
just putting it out there.
I
I'm
think
not-
there's
yeah.
there's difference to that because the delivery method is different, and I
Right.
think that's important for people because there's the convenience factor. There's the obscurity of it. That maybe that could not maybe not necessarily the best argument, but
It wasn't an argument. I was just saying,
Yeah.
like,
I think I don't know. I think about what you were saying in two ways. How people like
and it
yearn-
was the best, but it wasn't an argument, but it was
yeah,
the best.
no, I get it. I think to what you said, Mike. I can think of an people want to be connected to their beer, and that is certainly true. But like, everybody's at the top of the chain right now is like, how do we chase Voodoo Ranger? How was that like? Because now that's the thing, right? And that came from something of that. I feel like that was a boardroom full of people that sat down and said, how do we chase this opaque beer in a fish bowl on Instagram, or how do we chase this this thing that is so popular with people, and like look where it is now. And there's a strong
That's what everyone's chasing,
right,
yeah.
and it,
it's high ABV and
yeah.
low dollars.
It's
I
low.
think
Well,
is-
yeah. So that's the thing. There's a convenience
that's
factor.
math. That's not intimacy.
Right. Well,
No, but it's also who do you want to be taken seriously by? What's
Right.
exciting to them? I mean, that is a legit
But I think
question.
Yeah.
I think we're also trying to establish like a certain baseline for change, and I think
it's hard.
going back, we talked brown ales. 1999, I lived in Colorado. I'd go to Avery Brewing Company. They made Ellie's Brown. There were kegs on the ground, picnic tables. Ellie is literally running around drooling on you. It was just terrific, right? It felt of all the ways that I could possibly hope
Yeah,
for
you're
that
connected to it.
right? It's yeah, you're tapped directly into it. Today, the bar has been raised so immensely high that not only do you have to be in an environment that's stimulating, do you have to have world-class beers, do you have to be enveloped by the perfect packaging. It has to be incredible in order to now if you're maintaining a place that you have granted yourself over time, that's one thing. But if you are showing up to this and trying to create a new relationship with people, or even trying to sustain an old one, the bar for that is so incredible. It's such a difficult task.
That's what we're finding out now because we're and I took for granted being at Goose and how easy it was to get rid of beer. When I say get rid of beer, I mean like, this batch, I didn't love it, but somebody's going to drink it. This is Goose Island, that was, 2010. Cruz in 2016, like we had to, the landscape has changed, right? That traditional route to market is, that was like, the small brewery, the big brewery. And then, it's not that anymore. And we've found that out, multiple different ways. And, it's hard. It's really challenging.
I think on that note, we should maybe take a 5-minute break, freshen our drinks, stretch our legs, expand our minds a little bit, and come back for a little bit more.
We're back in the Beer Temple podcast. I'm your
Not
co-host,
speaking anymore.
Mike Shallow. Your mute co-host is Chris Quinn.
That's right.
We're with Jacob Sembrano of Cruz Blanca, Matt Tanaka of Malt Collective, and Gabriel Magliaro of Half Acre. Did I say that right?
You also nailed it.
It's now a bit spelled like it sounds. We're getting heavy. We're talking about existential ideas. We're talking about what it is to be in the craft beer industry.
Well, that was part one. We're now on part two. So we're talking about
Bozo buckets.
Yes. Yeah, smooth. I don't
Smooge.
Yeah, smooge. Who does the best smooge knockoff?
Does anyone do a smooch knockoff anymore?
I think we should stop right there because we're getting to get close to people that.
What's the opposite of existential?
Yeah, exactly.
Catty and annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Where did we leave off? Where should we go from here? Yeah.
Can we talk about how Mike just said people want to like things?
Yeah.
I don't think we said that on
He didn't.
I do believe.
Can you say it again, and then we can talk about it?
We were talking about just how Chris is a great curator of stuff and how his ability to tell people that he likes things makes it easier for other people to like things that aren't necessarily what's cool in craft beer right now. And I've long believed that people want to like things, but there's a lot of currency in saying you don't like things. So when someone with authority or someone with like lets you like things, it's a very freeing feeling to just like a lager.
And
right?
And I think people are almost like desperate to like things that are good or won't be bad. I mean, I think like the list, the top 10 list. I have a neighbor who, like, I guarantee you, anything he buys that I see that he's purchased, I can go online and look up that item and best. And that will come up. Like, that's how he shops. He just goes somewhere and sees what's the best. I need to have the best of everything. And
I do kind of live in your neighborhood, so appreciate you calling me out.
It's also, I mean, there's two sides to this. So, I mean, best, right? I mean, yeah, obviously we're all going to have like our own favorites and best, but yeah, some people need to be like, they want to like things. You're absolutely right. They want to feel validated for what they like. I think that's the most important thing, right? Because, you know, like they need some community and they need some assurance that that they're making the right decision and liking what they like.
Things on your own.
And that is, yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it is.
And because that requires a strong sense of self, right?
Yeah.
And the steadfast, confidence, and that's.
And you're saying that most craft beer consumers are weak-willed people without sense of self.
I mean,
no, that was me.
No, not
I'm kidding.
I mean,
I don't think that. No one
and I wasn't trying to. I was just making a joke. I wasn't saying you're saying that.
No, but there's.
Except I did say that.
I mean, there's a lot of truth. I thought when you talked about people want to feel connected to their product, I think that's true. But how does Kentucky Cold Snacks do that when, how did they do that? They've been incredibly successful, and they could be considered a macro brand, so there's always exceptions, and I get it, but they're always thought provoking. Right. How did I've been listening to like a lot of marketing type podcasts and stuff, and like Liquid Death is such an anomaly, but they struck it. They struck gold. And the freaking Happy Face Scrubby, the sponge. Like that's like this huge thing. How do you revolutionize the sponge industry?
Drill some holes in it.
Yeah, so you can clean your fingers and stuff, because it used to be, it was a sponge created for like auto mechanics, and they didn't care about it, and so they repurposed it. But I don't know, like people want to feel validated for what they like, but I mean, I don't like Taylor Swift, and she is on top, man. So there's a lot of back and forth.
You got the Kelsey bump. That's what it is.
Yeah, people love the Voodoo Rangers, and I know there's so many exceptions because price to sell, strong, C-store type stuff. But and that's not our consumer, but that is one road you can take, right? Well, they have their own conversations.
I don't think it is a road anyone else can take. Really, they're in like a separate stratosphere.
But you can't say that because
you can't say that because with Voodoo Ranger.
Where did they come from? You can't say that because they came from somewhere.
Where did they come? But when did they come from there?
Yeah,
but they
1994.
Someone
like
sat.
How much older is that company? How much bigger is that company?
Someone sat around and had these same conversations that we're having today in order to get to where.
But 15 years ago,
and that's okay.
Longer.
Yeah, right. So to think that we're in competition. And I come with the smallest brewery maybe in the world, but I'm not in competition with New Belgium. No one's looking at the shelf and being like, should I buy a Voodoo Ranger or this $13 bottle of 5% Saison? Yeah.
But it's a relative.
We're playing the same game.
I mean,
crazy.
Your route to success is different for everybody.
But I think it's also for like a local $9.99 6-pack is like you're not really competing too directly with Voodoo Ranger. I don't know. Obviously, I don't.
I mean, we're probably as close as it gets here, and we are not and cannot.
No,
we try super hard to
I think you
be
should
as
stop
low as possible.
Stop
trying
to compete with that.
So you're just gonna kill yourself and lose anyway.
But no, that's not necessarily
Bear
true.
I mean,
hugs.
someone will do it.
Yeah.
because
Right.
there's a large audience that want that, and I think that sometimes we might give ourselves a little bit too much credit, because my cousin in San Antonio, and my cousins in San Antonio, they work for HEB. They see new products in and out every single day, but you know what they stand by? Like my cousin's husband, he's super into like anything that Spolt's Brewery, Shiner Brock, Ruby Redbird, or you look at things, or the next new Belgian beer to come out. Like, those are big brands, and there's a large audience that, I mean, obviously there is a large enough audience to keep a very large company alive. So, I mean, like,
I just think I almost think it.
we can't
craft beer,
forget that people like that exist.
dude. I don't forget.
People
about
that
it.
I don't forget
I don't think. I don't
Yeah.
forget
Oh,
about
well,
it.
then
good. Well, then
But,
good.
like-
But that needs to pertain to at least some.
But
of
I
the
think craft
conversation.
beer has gotten to a point where maybe it's it's not a helpful definition anymore, because when you have Voodoo Ranger and was
It's the organic
under
of
the
food.
same tent, like, the differences so far outweigh the likenesses. I mean, Voodoo Ranger has so much more in common, I would argue, with Modelo than it does with was.
Right.
Personally,
I would argue then 98% of craft breweries. It's at such an insane scale.
sure. That one brand
Right.
specifically. But I think, to Jacob's point, I mean, if you read what Bart Watson is telling people to do, it's chase Voodoo Ranger. I mean, he's not
Bart
saying
Watson,
it. He's not literally saying it, but he's like,
Like-
high alcohol C stores is where growth is going to happen. It's like,
It's like,
well,
but-
good
but
luck,
that's not
dude.
right. Kick rocks, Bart Watson, because like you have 10,000 members supposedly, and 9,000 of them will never even have beer close to a C store,
Right.
unless there's a shop next to the C store that sells craft
Yeah.
beer. So like,
Are we getting away from Noam Chomsky now?
probably,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Noam Chomsky loves 7-Eleven.
I mean, to bring it back to ideas and innovation, I think one of the
Please do.
impacts of Voodoo Ranger, outside of who's literally competing against it from a sales perspective, is just the return of the line extension. It's just like that idea has trickled through the beer industry at such a fast rate. It's like a couple of years ago in the seltzer boom, it was like, okay, we want a can that is white that has a very small icon on it that can be interchanged really quickly. And now we want some sort of character that can be extended as much as possible, or whatever our flagship beer is, we're going to make as many variants as we can and put it in the market as quickly as we can. The competition then becomes more around innovation.
And that's saying
as the
crazy
idea.
things. That's the saying crazy things. Getting back to it, I think that's a
do you keep
dangerous
the attention?
thing. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, I'm saying
it's so
that,
watered down.
that's what is having a bigger impact, I think, on most of the beer industry than literally the sales. It's that is the type of innovation cycle we're kind of stuck in. Like, that's
Like
what feels
following,
like a new idea.
and it almost seems like, to me, like you were saying, you could feel when something felt real. Like Green Torch felt real. Who knows how it was actually created, but it just felt so half acre. I feel like I can almost feel when it's when it's like based in fear. Like, we're putting this out because we're afraid that we're going to miss out, or that we're afraid that we should be. And I don't know how, but I can just I get this sense of it. And
And that's not to speak poorly of the brewers making that decision, because I know the pressure to make that decision. I've been in that room a lot
Yeah.
of times, and there are pressures from distributors, there are pressures from your retailers, there are pressures from your investors, and from the rest of your company to put something out quickly that doesn't cannibalize your other beers.
Yeah.
And feels like innovation. And also, from a design standpoint or label printing standpoint, you can mix in really quickly without incurring a lot more costs. Like, I feel that pain.
I've done stuff out of fear, oh my gosh, I feel like I should be doing this, and yeah, I mean,
natural.
I think everyone,
Yeah.
that's why I got a co-host.
I think what's interesting about
I feared you
Voodoo
into
Ranger
it.
is that Voodoo Ranger does not feel like New Belgium, historic New Belgium, complete outlier in their program. And to distill it back to craft beer, again, not necessarily on the is-was level, but where did character-driven branding come from? Three Floyds Brewing Company.
I was just thinking that when you said it.
Who's also in craft doing well right now? Three Floyds Brewing Company.
They're
And
up this year, man. I mean, they're
they
doing
are up,
well.
which is
It's hard to do this year.
it's great to see them essentially being themselves and doing something they've done for a very long time, and doing well at it. And New Belgium has they have shaped themselves around this idea, and man, it's doing great. It's to a detriment, I would say, largely to a lot of different things, but it's doing great. It's way too cheap, and it's hard for craft to even show up against it, which Floyd's does not. They charge for their beer, but very, very, very cool and interesting, purely from a branding perspective.
Yeah.
I think about, to Matt's point about, like the insert new color here. I mean, we, as a play that we do at Cruz a little bit with our core stuff, but that is part of like the brand structure, and it feels right for what we're doing. And, versus, this luchador thing, like, I don't know how long I can keep this up.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to have to change, because after 6 years, 7 years, it's going to have to change. How much longer can like I physically and mentally keep up with it?
Probably a mental thing more than a physical thing, really.
Both. And then how long can the reputation support itself? And I don't know. I'm sure like at that crossroads, I'll need to figure it out. And I will figure it out, and maybe it'll work, and maybe it won't. But like, this is something that's gonna have to evolve.
How do you think BCS feels? I mean,
sure,
every
absolutely.
year, this is
from BCS's textbook.
Right.
It's just dressed differently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I totally see that.
I mean, every year they have to come up with like variants on variants on variants on variants, and yeah.
And then on the to Matt's point about like there's a distributor demand, there's a consolidating profiles, there's a lot of demand from the market on maybe even not necessarily being authentic, but just supporting the brand or whatever. And it's funny, like you bring up Green Torch, and this isn't I'm not jabbing or anything, but it was like. I took so much pride in that beer, and then we dropped it, and then 3 weeks later, Green Torch is like knocking on our lime and salt chilada. And there's nothing revolutionary about a lime and a lager, and I get it, but there was a part of me that was like, Green Torch is gonna cast a shadow on this beer that I'm like really psyched about, and I just fucking know it's gonna happen. And we did. The sales of that beer has far exceeded my expectations, which is huge, and I love that. And I think that making something new, like making something old new again, and is always going to happen. But yeah, like that was something that like I thought a lot about this year, and then going on to brand extensions, like how can we support this brand moving forward? And the brand extension is something that we're thinking about next year, but that is that's Modelo, right? Like with their Chilada line. So we're taking some stuff out of some pretty traditional playbooks, and we're just dressing them up differently. And sometimes people want that, and it kind of hurts me a little bit, but that's also a part of our beer reality.
So, Matt, one thing that I'm thinking about as I'm just listening to you all is how nothing is black and white. It's all the exact same things you say about an idea or a trend or a specific beer being bad. You could probably take the exact same things and make them be good and true and heartfelt for another beer, and it's so difficult. I mean, do you? And I guess maybe me even going to you is kind of pulling you into what I think may be some of it. But is it like how it's marketed or branded, or is it not? Is that just an extension of it? I don't know. There isn't really a question there, but I kind of felt like I wanted to talk to you or hear from you rather about that. When people are doing the same thing ostensibly, why does one speak so much and so truly while the other just rings so hollow, so fear-driven, or something else?
And just to add to that, because I was going to ask you the same, sort of that same thing, which is if craft beer is this extension of communication from the source, something so personal, how when people get to you, they're automatically coming to you saying, I need help translating my interests or getting closer to people that care about beer. How does that work, and how do you help them get back to themselves, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's a couple parts to it. I think one, it's important to understand who you are, and the other, it's important to understand who the people buying your product are. So like it's tempting for us in this kind of room to talk about good beer or bad beer or a good thing or a bad thing, but it's really more about what is fun or good or interesting or to somebody. Like it's about like people want to like things, and we want to give permission to like a bunch of different things. When I talk about what brand is or why it matters, usually I start with the idea that a brand is not actually something that you have. It's something that somebody takes away from what they've experienced with you. So good branding is really just having a very firm understanding of what you're trying to do and being very good at telling that to other people. Like just being very clear and honest and authentic about what you are. So I think it's why something like Green Torch is a good example and something like Solid Gold is a bad example, is that it doesn't have, one has a very clear connection that feels very true and was like worked on, and one feels like it was kind of a hollow play to try to copy something else. I think a lot of that has to do with like a really good understanding of who you are.
What are giveaways to you when you see stuff like that that make one very authentic from a brand and one an obvious play?
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's universals, or is it that you specifically saw things?
And I don't think it's universals. I think it has more to do with the literal person standing at the beer shelf. And that's like what makes this really, really hard.
Yeah, that makes it hard because then like it's not possible to have an inauthentic bad brand if it performs well, right? Or am I getting that wrong?
It depends on what your measure of performing
That's
well.
Voodoo Ranger, though.
Right, and
That
I think
distorted them completely. That was so outside of their persona, but it smoked and continues to smoke for them.
Right.
it did. And I think Voodoo Ranger, you can boil it down to, for the person that's buying it, it's about trying something new. Honestly, Voodoo Ranger is the promise, the original promise of craft beer, but like redistilled into an audience that doesn't spend time on Beer Advocate. Like I feel like it's like somebody gets to experience something new each time. They don't know what it is. They don't have all the background for it. It's affordable to them, but they get to try something that they've been given for the first time.
So you think people drinking Voodoo Ranger are looking to have a different experience each time, or maybe are okay with having a different experience getting it? It's not just I like hoppy stuff and I want to get messed up for cheap.
I think it's that at the level of
I don't know.
New.
I'm asking because that's how I've always thought of it, and I'd never considered it the other way. So
It's like I know what this
I'm
is.
cynical,
I like
so.
the last one. This one's going to be different, but I like the last one. So it's pretty low risk. It's affordable. It's going to get me bombed. Like it's the right for that audience, which
Right.
happens to be a very big audience.
sure.
It's the right.
And that's the distilled down
Venn
craft
diagram.
beer experience for
Yes.
people who only buy their beer at grocery stores.
Right, and I think the way I said it was probably very pessimistic and negative, and that's
No,
because
not
I've
at all.
spent the last decade and a half obsessing over this. But I think it's also interesting to think about it in a positive way in terms of the consumer. Like it's a consumer experience. It's just like giving somebody permission to like something That's what that does, is it gives somebody who's not obsessing over the idea of craft beer, maybe even wouldn't use the phrase craft beer, permission to try something new that doesn't push them out of their comfort zone. That's like a very attractive idea.
Right, and
I
it's
think that's the
also
actual premise.
like if you were a, Coors Banquet drinker, and every time you got it, there was some slight variation. It's interesting because to a Coors Banquet drinker, that's almost like exactly what they don't
Despise.
what they don't want. But in this instance, it's like it's a very confined. It's safe in a way. Like I maybe can take new experiences, but still in this very similar lane. It's still going to be strong. It's still going to be cheap. It's maybe going to be a little different. Maybe I'll like it more. Maybe I won't. But it'll be, like the new flavor of Doritos. I'm going to try it. Will I like it as much as Cool Ranch? Or, probably not.
Yeah.
But hey, it was different, and it had
Impossible.
a different color to it. My fingers are purple this time.
We need to find the people that are like super into rating the different Voodoo Rangers. Like, and I'm not
I
making a
really
joke.
don't
Right.
think they exist.
Really?
And if
really
they
don't
did, they
think
wouldn't.
that-
It wouldn't
There's got to
write
be
it
people
down.
making lists.
That's the opposite.
There's
of the
people who have
point.
like Taylor Swift favorite album lists.
And there's people
It's
who
gotta
are
be.
like way into like Monster Energies, and like when a certain one comes out, they're like, "Oh, I want this one. You have to get it at Costco."
Ryan might listen to the podcast. So.
No, but I know people who are like they like certain Monster Energy drinks, and when they see a certain one, they go and grab it. They don't even know the name of it, or they may. That one's Arctic Blast, but
Sounds
it's the white
delicious
one
and
with the
refreshing.
yeah, exactly. But maybe it's that. Maybe it's just like the Monster Energy-ification of beer, where it's like, oh, this one's a different color, and it might have a slightly different flavor to it, but
I think
it's still going to be Monster Energy.
I beer templed this idea where really you're just saying that people just want to go to the grocery store and get something that's incrementally new from the thing they had before, so they feel like they're exploring.
Is that where they're buying it, or are they
Yeah.
buying it at 7-Eleven?
Voodoo Ranger?
Yeah, well, they're buying it at other purchase experiences. Like they're buying it with something else. They're there to get chips and dip and go to the party, and it's like the old school thing we talk about consumers. They're buying the 6-pack on the way to the party. That's what it is. They're going to spend 5 seconds in the beer aisle. They don't want to overthink it. It's an easy, reliable choice that feels new and kind of interesting.
But also repeatable.
Repeatable. Yeah.
Right.
Once
It's reliable.
Yeah, I have a friend who works at a...
Started off talking about Noam Chomsky, and now we're talking about Voodoo Ranger.
There's
Well,
not like
Noam
a single
loves Voodoo
conversation
Ranger.
in my life that doesn't somehow make its way right back to Voodoo Ranger.
What?
Oh,
This is-
really?
Yeah, this dominates my work life right now. Because,
Really?
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I don't
from,
talk about it much at all.
I know, but you don't do strategy
Right,
and
right,
branding
right.
for breweries. It's like
Yeah.
whether I'm in these tiny little startup rooms, breweries and planning, or like the biggest craft in the country, they are all talking about the same thing. They're trying not to. They're trying so hard not to. But they're seeing this and trying to say, what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
Nothing. It means nothing
Right.
for them.
Yeah.
It's totally unattainable for anyone that's making less than, 300,000 barrels a year. It's like you can't touch all those metrics that make it viable. You just have to hope that you can connect in some other way, at some other level. It's
I mean,
just-
is even someone
that's
like
absolutely right.
is even like Sierra Nevada trying to like touch with on that level? Even
I
they're
don't
not
see
playing
it.
that
I
game.
don't-
They're not.
No,
Yeah.
I don't see it, which is probably they could, but I think maybe there's an integrity factor or something,
Maybe
or,
it should
or a
like
creative.
show you something like, listen, like a lot of these big people aren't even going after that.
Is there a marketing aspect that can be attained, if not the volume and efficiencies?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think that's more what I'm talking about. It's like the philosophy behind it. And I think one interesting thing that is important, something we talk a lot about, is the foundation of this conversation was about like big ideas or new or loud. I think there's something really important in focusing on what you already have, like a return to flagships and seasonals, and that if you take a flagship and you try to line extend the crap out of it, you can very easily lose the heart of what that beer is. And then consumers can kind of see it as like, maybe it's it loses its recognition because they're seeing a bunch of different versions.
You're
of the
Marvel
same
Universing it, man. You're just going to squeeze it until every last drop. Or maybe Star Wars is a better example. Like, every last drop of, like, people's love has just been extracted, you know?
Well, but that love is now money, so what's the big deal?
Exactly. I'm for it. That's what I'm saying. I'm pro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what modern capitalism is. But
That's what I just said.
anyway,
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like with these brand extensions, like they can go from cool to money grab feeling like pretty fast. Like,
or even not even just money grab feeling, like desperate feeling. Like it's
Yeah.
really easy to like. There's so much pressure for a brewery to have a new idea all the time, and
yeah, and
sometimes
have to shout. And I'm pointing at my laptop, but it makes no sense. But
Perfect.
yeah,
That was the
shouts
quote.
down
That
the
was the
front
quote.
page. Yeah,
Yeah, and it is more prudent, I think, looking at the long term of really understanding what you do really well and really investing in that. That's the scarier thing. It's the harder thing, and it's harder now with the amount of breweries that we have and the amount of things that are shouting for attention to have that kind of confidence. But that's the
And
kind
if you're
of thing
down
that-
year
And
over
it's-
year, it's probably even more hard
and it's
to do that.
slower.
it's
right?
slower. Yeah.
It's slower, but it's
Yeah. And if you have a parent company, you don't have the luxury because you're being told where to.
every quarter you got to be doing certain things.
Yeah.
Shouting also means a lot of things because to me, my version of shouting was the white vermouth beer, right? But another brewery's shouting is the brewery and insert suburb here that has just introduced the hazy or the milkshake IPA, and people can't get enough of it. So I mean that's like super relative, So.
I mean, when you released the white vermouth beer, did you think everyone was gonna be like, "Oh, hell yeah, white vermouth"? I drink that all the time.
It doesn't matter what because that was
It doesn't matter
because
what
I
you
had because at that moment in time there was one beer that I had that could be Jacob, right? Like so I was shouting and
So personally,
it was a personal shout,
Yeah.
right? And not all the luchadors are like that, but that was my version of shouting. And everybody's shout is different. And I think that we couldn't stop talking about how invasive we thought the hazy and the milkshake and the fruited Berliners were. Like that was the topic of interest for the last. I mean, it's not so much anymore. Funny, right? How that works out. But it was the topic of interest for the last 3 years, and now it seems to have run its course. And I think most things do that, but I mean, I don't know. People run out of breath eventually after shouting. So,
So, if you want to be listened to, is that me? It's my old man. So,
podcast is going long. Chris,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. I'm listening live. He probably wants to talk about, I guarantee you,
Villanova basketball
or the Eagles.
Eagles. Yeah, they play today.
No, but I'll still talk about it.
The Phillies are in the playoffs.
All right. Well, anyway, so we can talk about my old man afterwards.
No, sir. Podcast only.
Yeah. So Gabriel, the heart of I think what this statement was that exciting things are exciting because they're good and new and interesting, and they have a certain effect, and that you can replicate that effect in other ways just by doing crazy things and stuff like that. And what you were saying early on and tonight was that you felt that a good place for craft beer to get back to was having a kind of sustainable relationship between the brewer and the consumer. So are you saying that maybe is craft beer like post excitement, or is, because that doesn't seem, so that has been done. So now do we settle in, and I don't mean this in a negative way necessarily.
I think it needs to be a sustainable level of excitement that maybe invest more in the traditional ideas of who you are, not necessarily traditional beer or the customs that date back to European culture or whatever. But I think
Sure.
as time goes on, we as brewing entities develop a culture of our own, and we have to get better. And using some of Matt's words here about burrowing deeper into ourselves and being able to offer that sustainable idea of who we are and how you all as beer drinkers can connect back to us in new ways, deeper ways, and continued ways. And that is wonderful. That staying right here and enjoying what this is over time and in a historic way is healthy. It's not just healthy for our brewing company, it's healthy for you and your senses and what you believe in and care about. We need that. It has to be circular, and I think that's really good, because just like plunging new into your veins all the time, I think it's proven to be unsustainable for everyone. It's not sustainable for us as a brewing company, and I don't think you, beer drinker, can really sustain it either. Waiting in lines and or being baffled by the beer department or anything, or caring about more and more and more and different.
Yep.
It's okay to feel comfortable in this brown ale right here.
Right.
And to feel comfortable in it for a long period of time, as long as we're expanding our understanding of it together.
And I couldn't agree more. My least favorite time of my time in craft beer was several years ago, where everybody was just pounding out "quote unquote" new,
and we've
but it
done
was
it.
really
We've
all
done it.
the same.
I'm not
it was
like,
really all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I would love for there to be, new and changing but kind of like rhythmic, that you kind of like, I'll just create an imaginary brewery, but they have their flagship that I love. And then I know that these seasonals come out at this time of year, and I know that at this time of year, this certain beer is going to come out and come and go. And then maybe there'll be another time of year where another beer will come out, and it might have one change to it, or it'll be a variant every year, but it isn't. But that's it. It's no more than that, and I want to get it. If I don't, oh well. But it's this thing that kind of comes and goes,
but
and maybe changes a little bit.
That's a sustainable relationship,
right? And it's
right?
cyclical, like you were saying. It isn't like just constantly being, as you said, like freebasing new. It's like you got the glass pipe in your
quote,
hand.
Right?
Yeah, no, it was a
All
quote.
this is a quote.
Right
A little
before,
different
much like the
than mine,
Chomsky
but
quote.
I like
Go
his
on,
better
Chris.
than
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
Free basing with the glass pipe in
with
your
a
hand.
glass pipe.
Dash Gabriel Magliaro. Did I say that right?
Yeah, no, that you said it
let's
right.
go with that. Yeah,
Yeah. So you can have these. You can have new. You can have iterations. You can have whimsy and fun, but it's also like stable, like in a way. Like I know that whatever brewery I'm talking about at whatever month or whatever time of the year is going to have these things, and you know what? They might throw in a fun thing.
Yeah.
Once or twice a year that are like off schedule, that may never come around again. And that is kind of cool, but it's like lower key and not like every week. It's like bang, 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 bang,
And
bang.
it's like investable, right? It's something that we can offer you, that all these things connect back to something. These flagship is part of our identity, a major part of who we are. These seasonals, this is our feeling on the weather and how we feel during these times of year. These little things, they're more an off understanding of cool things. And because there's only this amount, you can pay attention to it, and we can build a life around it.
I want to make sure that we're not just doing the version of the best music that was ever recorded just happened to be recorded during my senior year of high school. Like I don't want it to be like this was when we were enjoying craft beer the most. This is what it was like. So that's what we should get back to.
Well,
I don't necessarily think
yeah.
it, but am I blind to it because that was the music during my senior year of high school?
I mean,
you know,
That's what we're doing.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know.
think so.
Okay.
The beers that bring me a lot of stress, good and bad stress, and it's something to be proud of, and it's something to not sleep over at some certain points of time. I mean, this is like 2% of our existence. I can't wait to hit 15 years of Mexico Calling because it has taken us 7 years to get that beer to where it is now, and there has been so many tweaks along the way, and there's this point to where, like, in 10 years, I'm gonna love that beer just the same, and I'm gonna be really proud of it. And we have partners that make that beer. We brew it, or we brew a ton of it at the pub, and that's like going back to that like core season, year round. Like that is something that it took me 13 years as a brewer. Well, I mean not 13 years, but I warmed up to the idea of it. But I've been brewing for 13 years, and I'd say like the more I've matured in this, like I don't want the one-offs anymore. That stuff gets like really fatiguing, and I think that I want the consumer to be able to buy Mexico Calling any time of the year, and I want them to stand by that beer, and I want them to have it in their fridge, for 5, 6, 7 years, and I want to find that can stepped on and shoved in the middle, like in Logan Square, and I want to find, I want that can to be trash.
That's a sign, man.
Because when that
a
can is
sign.
trash, I mean, yes, I know, polluting bad.
No,
but
that's not what I mean. I mean,
no, you get
you've
it.
reached
But
a level
vibing.
when you start
Right.
finding
It's always
litter
been.
of.
I
yeah.
get off on nothing more.
I mean,
Well,
it's-
Well, good.
Seeing
I
it.
appreciate.
I've
Yeah.
ever seen
Crushed half-acre
Pipeworks
can
bottle
somewhere.
caps.
So, but ultimately, that's what this is. This is an opportunity of mine that I can really like flex. But I put so much work into maintaining our brewing partners' relationships, into constantly working at making something like Mexico Calling like a fridge beer, and a lot of people are starting after, we only got serious about distro, 4 years ago, and now people are like, oh, that beer's in my fridge, and we went from brewing like, 20 barrels, like every 2 months to like, almost, 200-300 barrels a month, like that's a beer that like has.
I think I had one at Wrigley Field, right?
Yeah, like it's all those little.
Could have had a daisy cutter. Decided not.
Oh, that stings right here.
But you're just
on
man. But you know what?
TV,
I mean, you know this.
Yeah, create a new language.
You know this.
Get to Chris.
You got to chip away at every little opportunity you can.
Daisy
Yeah.
cutter.
And then before you know it, like you've built something that is sustainable, and it takes a long time to do that. And we're finding that out. I mean, when Manny had his packaged food line, Frontier Foods, like he went through that same growing pain, and he's like, the brand didn't even get popular until we had been doing it for 12 years, and sometimes that is the route that you got to take.
Yeah. Yep.
It's tough, but we're finding that out.
Slow
And
growth to a overnight success.
it's the tipping point that we always talk about. And when does that happen? I've thought we've tipped over, and we're not even close yet.
Who knows? Nobody knows. I
Nobody
guess
knows.
Malcolm Gladwell does. Whatever.
Yeah,
Maybe the Roots.
the Roots. I would pick the Roots over Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't think we've exhausted the topic, but I
Not
think
even
we're
close.
getting there. No,
Noam would say we didn't,
no, you wouldn't.
but Noam can kick rocks right now.
Yeah. Is anything
he's dedicated his life to it, so the conversation never ends.
right? Yeah. So I wanted to thank everyone. I want to thank I want to thank our guests. I want to thank Gabriel for just being like, hey, let's talk about something deep. I want to thank Mike for just being a psycho who thinks about Noam Chomsky quotes and being like, all right, and like taking up that challenge.
I'm 90% the yucks and 10% Noam Chomsky quotes.
Right, exactly. So, is there anything that was left unsaid, or that you guys want to talk about before we go? We have time, so you know.
Sierra's Voodoo Ranger is hazy little thing. That's what I want to say.
Okay. It's certainly
That's fair.
performing very
say,
well for them.
Hazy Little Thing never tried to match with me on Tinder when I was 28. So
Yikes.
Oh yeah, tell that story real quick.
I just, well, back in my formative years, you would swipe through Tinder, and every once in a while, one of them would be the Voodoo Ranger guy holding like a little like daisy. And so I have a very specific opinion of Voodoo Ranger.
And did you match?
No.
99%
I swiped
match.
right, and he said, "I don't even want to sell beer." No, of course not. It was just fucking. Sorry, it was just invasive and weird, and they were trying stuff, but it really turned me off to that brand in a lot of different ways that I was already turned off to the brand. But
Gabriel's picking up his phone and frantically telling
Swiping,
somebody to stop
swiping,
doing something immediately.
We don't do Tinder.
Timber. That's how you know he's honest.
Anything else before we get out of here, guys? No? Okay. Well, are we on next week? Mike, I will be in Tuscany, so I won't be here.
We're bringing back the
Yeah.
one-on-ones, the beer that
That's
changed
right.
my life.
Yeah, we've got Tom from Goldfinger.
Yeah.
One-on-one. Mm-hmm. You going to get deep?
I got to text him about which beer changed his life. He confirmed, but I'd like to leave it to the last minute to know what he's going to talk about.
Good. Awesome.
It's probably going to be a Voodoo Ranger variant.
Probably.
so.
Yeah.
Whatever one he picked up on the way.
Yeah.
Changed my life, man.
Oh, shit. I would love him to show up like, it's a
Yeah.
Voodoo Ranger with Sabro.
Right.
That would make my day.
Yeah, mine too. Well, looking forward to hearing it, and I will talk to you guys in a couple weeks. But until
Enjoy
then,
Italy, bud.
thank you. I plan to. All right. Well, so long.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what